Hello and welcome everyone to our 43rd session of Halukasa. My name is Michael and today I'll be talking to Sergei Tcherniak from Belarus. Originally used to be living in Israel and now living in Berlin. Sergei, please introduce yourself to our audience and tell them who you are and what you're doing at the moment.
Hi. I'm a realtor, living in Berlin for approximately 9.5 years.
Mhm.
More than 5 years in the real estate business. I live in Berlin and work mostly in Berlin, but also all over Germany. Um, I enjoy my living here and working and helping people to buy, to sell, to rent, and to let their properties in Berlin.
Great. Berlin is actually the hottest market I think in all over Germany. So I think you chose a very interesting profession in Berlin. We will come to that a little bit later. First of all, I would like to talk a little bit about your journey from Belarus via Israel to Berlin. How did that happen? And also very interesting about your stay in Israel. Tell us a little bit about your stay there.
Well, um, I was born in Minsk, USSR.
Hmm.
Later, it became the state of Belarus,
Hmm.
White Russia, um, and I, I liked very much to learn new languages. First, it was English, then German, and from studying German, actually, has started my let's call it romance with Germany.
Hmm.
I left for Israel 1995, and as I went to the university, I studied economy and German literature.
Hmm.
I didn't want to lose language,
Hmm.
and my jobs were either connected with this way or another to Germany
Hmm.
and to German language.
So,
Later,
so that means you speak fluently three languages.
five,
How many?
five,
Five. Okay, what is
five:
it? What is it?
Russian,
Yeah,
Hebrew,
yeah,
English,
yeah.
German, and French.
Okay, wow. Okay, so the the best basics in order to be a real estate agent for an international market and for international clients.
Yes, I would say many people say that Berlin is not Germany, but it's also possible and right to say that London is not England, Paris is not France, New York is not America, etc., etc., etc.
Hmm.
So Berlin is very international.
Hmm.
Many of my clients do not speak German,
Hmm.
so languages do help,
Okay.
indeed.
So you then went to Israel. What did you do there?
Well, many things. I actually lived there. I spent in Israel 16 years,
Hmm.
so it's actually one third of my life. And I studied, I worked, I lived there, I married there.
Hmm.
Uh, my daughter was born in Israel,
Hmm.
so
So,
I liked very much living in Israel. I'm still Israeli citizen,
mhm.
but I also like very much living in Germany, in Berlin.
Okay. So and then moving to Berlin, what in fact like was the for you was it easy for you to move from Israel to Berlin, and how did you also adapt to the culture for someone who has never been to Berlin? What was the move like, and was it easy for you?
Well, let's say, first time I was in Berlin, I remember the date. It was 21st of August, 1991.
Mm-hmm.
It was the last day of the
Mm-hmm.
putsch in the USSR, and afterwards I was two or three times in Berlin, and it was not my uh, first visit to Berlin as I came
Mm-hmm.
here. And I also have many friends in Germany, and actually every second year I was coming here. I speak language. I spoke language. So it was not for me just a mysterious country.
I understand.
And I also have been living in Israel and working for a German organization for 10 years.
Okay.
So
you already
I was not alienated in the German culture.
Absolutely. Okay, I understand. For people who have never been to Berlin, how would you describe the city itself to someone who doesn't know it? And what are things which you like the most about?
Well, it depends on the people. Berlin has everything to offer. The best and the worst. I would say you can find here the best and the worst coffee. You can find here the best and the worst cars. You can find here the best and the worst museums. Great nature. I would say reasonable climate. Interesting history. Music. Everything. Actually, it's a world city. I would say if you take Europe, Berlin is at least the third important European city after London and Paris, and first in Germany.
Yeah. No, I totally agree concerning you get everything in Berlin. I think whenever I travel to Berlin, I'm always let's say I always feel like it is super diverse. You find like so many people from so many aspects and from so many let's say mental regions that you feel like okay, it is very mindset wise. It is very diverse. Also, how people dress up and stuff. It is very, very interesting to just walk across Berlin. And
somebody said about New York that New York is planet Earth pressed into one city. That is correct about New York, but that is also correct about Berlin.
That's a very nice one, yeah. And also, obviously, it is very multicultural, which is amazing as well.
That's what I mean. Yeah. You can meet people here from all over the world.
So tell us a little bit about Berlin from, let's say, a real estate perspective. How is the city divided? What does it have to offer concerning neighborhoods, interesting neighborhoods, not so much interesting neighborhoods? What's your stake and what's your take? Sorry, on that, and how can you describe that in a few sentences?
Well, first of all, let's say you said how was Berlin divided? I would say put the history on one side and Berlin today on the other side, because division of Berlin currently has no influence on the real estate market. Maybe the most important influence that former division of Berlin into West and East is that Berlin till today has two centers. And many things in Berlin are double. Let's say zoo is double. Main train station used to be a couple years ago double. Main airport is still double, east and west. So everything is quite double. But we shouldn't forget that Eastern Center lays next to the Western Center. It's possible to imagine number 8 on the side. So both circles of number 8 are both centers of Berlin, but they're one next to another. So it's still one center. And currently in Berlin, the most expensive neighborhoods are in East, but the Western expensive neighborhoods are not much cheaper. The cheapest neighborhoods are also in East and West. The sightseeing you can do well at East and as well at West. Everything is the city is united,
Yeah.
and there are no much differences between them,
Yeah.
between the both parts.
Um, you just mentioned that there are some more expensive neighborhoods and some less expensive neighborhoods. Can you name them? Can you say like, okay, if you're looking for like a more high class neighborhood, you should definitely go to this one versus something where it's more affordable, you should go somewhere else.
Well, let's say it's not only about being more or less expensive. It's about also being more or less quiet,
Okay.
uh, more or less vibrant,
Mm-hmm.
more or less fashionable. Let's say the uh, most or currently mostly required or mostly asked neighborhoods are uh, Mitte, Kreuzberg, Charlottenburg, Wilmersdorf, Prenzlauer Berg.
Okay.
Yes.
Those are the most demanded right now across all generations, or is that rather until a certain age or more mature? I don't know. Like, what is? Do you see any patterns there where in which age group those areas are more requested?
Well, let's say the younger people would prefer the areas with cafes, restaurants, clubs, uh, evening life,
Mm-hmm.
nightlife. So now we are talking about maybe Prenzlauer Berg, Mitte, Kreuzberg. Uh, Charlottenburg and Wilmersdorf are uh, more quiet
Mm-hmm.
and more bourgeois.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but you can also take, for example, Zellendorf.
Mm-hmm.
It has a name or is known for being quiet neighborhood of upper class.
Okay.
The same is right for Grunewald.
Okay. Yeah, Grunewald is very famous for being quite upper class. Yeah, I remember that
Yes.
when I
But
used to.
let's say in Berlin there is a quite tricky situation that the upper class area is not the most expensive area.
Okay, how come?
Well, let's say uh, Kreuzberg and Mitte are more expensive than Grunewald,
Okay,
but it depends on the very specific area in Grunewald.
okay, interesting. But in Grunewald, you also get less like single apartment or small apartments. It's isn't it more like family homes, like detached or semi-detached houses, or and then
Yes,
maybe.
actually, in Berlin there is a circle line of S-Bahn, that is city metro,
Mhm.
that you can go in circles for the whole day.
Mhm.
Um, and when you are in the east, the uh, the train is full of people. You have no place to stay, and we're not talking about to sit.
Mhm.
As the train approaches West Berlin,
Mhm.
uh, it's empty. So you notice that more people live in East than in West.
Mhm.
And Grunewald is actually part of Charlottenburg.
Mhm.
And there are no many big residential buildings.
Yeah. Okay, I understand.
So mostly either small residential buildings or villas.
Yeah.
So physically, there are less people living there.
Yeah. I understand. Totally, totally makes sense. Can you give us an overview of obviously the range will be very wide, but an overview of the prices per square meter, more or less. What can I expect if I want to buy an apartment in any of those regions, and you can just choose if you have something in your mind right now. If not, that wouldn't be any problem either.
Let's say last year, 2019, In the same year, I sold an apartment for 2,500 euros per square meter, approximately, and for 6,000 euros per square meter.
Okay.
But I also read about prices beneath 2,000 per square meter, and about the prices above 15,000 euros per square meter. You have everything.
We have everything,
and that is quite a paradox to understand how it comes that in the same city you can find prices of 2,000 euros per square meter and say 12,000 euros.
Is that also?
But it's our reality.
Is that also triggered or dependent on the neighborhood itself, or is it even that crazy that you say, hey, I have something in Wilmersdorf where you find like 2,000 versus 10,000 per square meter, or is it? Do you see?
Let's say Berlin is huge, and it's quite impossible for people to look for something in the whole of the city. Actually, people are concentrated in the area they feel comfortable in. Let's say I live personally in Wilmersdorf, and I have a friend living in Mitte. And for him to come to visit me is just like to go into another city. For me to come to visit him is actually the same. And as he was looking for apartment to buy, he was concentrated in his area in the east.
Understand.
As I was looking, I was concentrated in my area. So
that's also
we're talking.
Yeah, that's also something very particular. That's what also my question before was leading to concerning the division of Berlin. It's very scattered. It's like Berlin has originated from a lot of small towns which then got united in the in the early 20th century. And isn't it that the fact that you still see this pattern that you live in Wilmersdorf and you work in Wilmersdorf, and more or less like 90% of your entire life is happening in Wilmersdorf? And this happens to a lot of people. Obviously, you commute, and especially you as a real estate agent, doesn't apply to you that much. But a lot of people still are very, very torn towards their own kiez, towards their own neighborhood.
Totally agree. I will give an example. I used to be a member of a municipal organization in the neighborhood of Spandau in Berlin. And Spandau used to be independent city till some 20s of the 20th century. So let's say in between the two world wars, Spandau turned to be part of Berlin. But I still saw postcards and printed material of the 70s and 80s that over them it was written Spandau near Berlin, Spandau by Berlin. I mean, Spandau is now for 100 years part of Berlin. But still, 30, 40 years ago, people used to think that Spandau was near Berlin, not part. So I would say important is also to understand that the people living in Berlin are both conservative and adopters of new ideas, both of them.
Okay, interesting. So that means also you have like a very socially from the mindset of the people, you have like on the one hand like innovative people, but then on the other hand like people who like to remain in the status quo.
I'm not talking about two groups of people living one next to another.
Okay.
I'm talking about the same people.
Okay.
The people living in Berlin are conservative and innovative. The both. Okay. It's just like you can eat Meat and potato, both of them.
Okay, understand. Okay, um, very interesting. I haven't heard about that before about any other city. So this is very particular for Berlin. That's a very very nice nice saying. Let's say. I have one quick question concerning you as an immigrant, if I may say so, in to Berlin. Um, how have people from Berlin accepted you? Have you felt any? For me, it's always super important to also touch upon this topic for people from other countries moving somewhere. Have there been any challenges for you moving to Berlin, or is it can you also just recommend it to someone else? Say
Well,
it has been quite easy.
let's say I'm a great believer that everything that happens outside of your body,
Hmm.
in the outer world, actually is projection of the things happening in your head. So
That's nice.
I would say I felt very comfortable where I was born
Hmm.
in Minsk, USSR.
Hmm.
I felt very comfortable in Israel,
Hmm.
and I feel now very comfortable in Germany. Uh, I cannot say I am not aware of this kind or another uh, of alienating foreigners,
Hmm.
of not accepting them. But me personally, my family uh, do not suffer.
Okay.
We have great relations with all types of people living in Berlin.
Hmm. Great. Great to hear that. That's always very important to have that. Um, I have another question now, coming a little bit to politics and also the situation right now in Berlin concerning real estate. Right now, there's this quite huge topic around the rental cap in Berlin, which also obviously affects the potential rents which you have to pay as a tenant and which property owners will obtain. You as an expert, especially also locally there, being totally involved in this topic. I also saw on your own YouTube channel that you're recording and publishing things about exactly this topic. Tell us a little bit about, for someone who has never heard about it, what is it about? What is right now happening in Berlin, or what might happen in Berlin about this rental cap?
Well, let's say statistically, the population of Berlin is growing in the last 20 years for minimum 15,000 and maximum of 75,000 new inhabitants a year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, last year, well, let's say we're now in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
but last year, statistically, it's still 2018
Mm-hmm.
because we still don't have statistics of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2018, the population of Berlin has grown approximately for 40,000 new people. But here in the city, were built only approximately 16,000 new flats.
Mm-hmm.
So if we take that in every flat, uh, approximately can live two people,
Mm-hmm.
we are still lacking approximately 8,000 flats.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, 8,000 people are still remaining without flats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
And this flat shortage has been growing for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an economist.
Mm-hmm.
And we have an economy simple laws of supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
So the demand for residential properties in Berlin has been growing for more than 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And supply was also growing, but the difference between them also was growing.
Mm-hmm.
And this brought to exploding real estate prices.
Mm-hmm.
If, for example, 5 years ago, it was still possible to find in Berlin properties properties that used to cost 700 or 800 euros per square meter. Today, you're lucky if you find something that costs less than 2,500.
Okay.
If 5 years ago it was still possible, or recordly high prices were maybe 5,000 euros 5 years ago. Today we already see 15, and the average price of the properties in Berlin is approximately 4.5 thousand euros per square meter. The same about the rents, or even more severe. Today, it's practically impossible to find in Berlin a flat for rent, a one-room flat for rent that would cost you less than 500 euros a month.
Wow.
And 2 or 3 room flats would cost above 1,000 euros a month.
While obviously, what is, for example, the average salary someone obtains, or the minimum salary? This is also obviously has to be put into perspective.
I would say the mean salaries. I don't know about average, but you know what the difference
mean is perfect.
Mean and average. Mean average salary in Berlin is approximately 1.7, 1.8 thousand euros a month.
Net or gross?
Net.
Okay. So we have an idea of more or less like what you're paying for so the percentage of the apartment which you're paying for.
Actually,
quite
what is sure that if you get more than 2,000 euros a month on your bank account, you are above average.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you were saying that demand has obviously increased, supply hasn't increased that much, and now the government, or the Berlin government, decided to rule, or to come up with the idea to impose a rental cap, so that obviously it is more fair for the tenants, because otherwise they're gonna get kicked out. Because we also know that things like what has been happening is that investors are coming. They are renovating and restructuring the apartments. Then they call it okay for their own purpose. Tenants need to move out, and then they re-rent it to higher paying tenants. And I think this was more or less like also the trigger for the local politicians to say, no, we have more or less like to rule against it and make sure that the tenants who have been living there for 20, 30 years are still have more or less like the right and the possibilities to remain living there. However, it is also then the discussion about, is that really the right policy and the right action to just impose a rental cap, and why don't you just construct or build new apartment buildings?
Well, let's say I was born in a country with a socialist economy. And I have no good words about socialist economy. I appreciate many socialist ideas that are implemented now in the Western world, just like social security, medical insurance, etc., etc., etc. But I still believe in supply and demand. And you cannot dictate with the law to supply and demand. And I believe the only solution to the exploding prices in Berlin is to build, and to build.
And why are they not doing it? I don't understand that one. Like, yeah.
I'm not sure I have the answer, or I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask this question. But there is a very, very famous saying of Winston Churchill, who said once that the difference between a politician and a statesman is that the statesman thinks about the future generations. and the politician thinks about the future elections.
That's true. Okay.
So I was a couple of months ago at a discussion with the senator for building of Berlin, Katrin Lomscher. And she said that statistically, a bit less than 50% people living in Berlin are poor. So every second person living in Berlin is poor. And 85% of people living in Berlin are renters. 85. So we are talking about the electoral basis of the politicians. They are trying to make favor to their voters. They think they're trying. But let's say I come to visit you and you live alone and you have only one pair of house shoes in your home. And I'm coming to visit you with my wife and 2 children. And you still have one pair of house shoes. Whatever you do, there are only 2 possibilities. Either one of the 5 people wears your house shoes, or we settle a kind of agreement that everyone wears it for 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, but it's still one pair of shoes. Whatever we decide, it's still one pair of shoes. Whatever politicians decide, there is shortage of supply in Berlin.
The rental cap says that for all the buildings or for all the apartments, there's a certain cap on the square meter price, which depends on the, if I recall it correctly, which depends on the year which was built and also the infrastructure of the building and stuff. And that also, as much as I understood it correctly, that also implies that obviously some right now are much higher, some rental prices of already existing buildings which have been equipped in a proper way, and they have to be reduced right now. So the prices, the property owners, which calculated maybe also their ROI, their return on investment based on the rental income which they thought they would get, doesn't make any sense anymore once this law is imposed.
Exactly. Let's say the new law would disregard or almost disregard disrespect the relocation of the property. So currently, for example, we have 2 main streets in Berlin. There is one main street in every center. And as I said, in Berlin, there are 2 centers. Kurfürstendamm is the central street of Western Berlin, and Friedrichstraße is the main street of East Berlin. So it's just like in the city with the sea. The first row of the building facing the sea is more expensive than the second row.
It's like
second row is more expensive than the third row. So it's normal for normal economy. But the new law would say that there will be no difference between the flats or between the buildings of the same building here in the whole center.
Yeah, because I actually, when I did the research about it, and I have also to tell the audience that I'm not an expert there, so I barely know anything about it. But I was expecting like to find a map about like the rental cap per region, because that's what I know about Bogota, like where you have like for each certain neighborhood a different price, and you can see like obviously the market price per neighborhood. And for me, it doesn't really make sense. That means like, okay, so since I anyway pay everywhere more or less the same, because all the prices across Berlin will most probably like adjust to the ceiling of it, then I obviously chase for the hotspot and for the one which is like which has a prime location, and because then I'd have to commute less. But then I also hear on the other hand that right now the run on housing and the run on available apartments is humongous. You have to apply months ago or month before it with a CV. The best thing is also to have a police certificate, a background certificate, like everything you can imagine. And then I understand, like I see a power distribution towards the hotspots, while no one wants to live like in the supposedly poorer neighborhoods, because it more or less anyway ends up at a ceiling, because everyone has like a certain justification for that. I don't know, like that's just my assumption. I would like to have your opinion on that, if my thought process is correct there, or if I'm missing anything.
I would say the new law, if it will be accepted by the parliament, will bring the black market and the deficit.
What do you mean by black market?
Because black market, I mean, theoretically, people letting the flats without contract or with two contract, real and the false.
Oh, okay. I haven't thought about
cash,
that. Okay.
etc., etc., etc. Because, for example, it's you cannot regulate with the law the city where you can still find prices of 2.5 thousand euros per square meter and 7-8 thousand euros per square meter, or even 9 and 10. You cannot say that you cannot divide this city into upscale, normal, and downscale. And the politicians really do want to divide Berlin in upscale, normal, and downscale localities. It's too simple. It's too black and white.
But they don't want to do that. If they wanted to do that, they would then do that via a map, or do they do that in a different way via the status and the state of the apartment? I mean, like year of construction and infrastructure. What do you mean by exactly like this entire segmentation of the prices? On what vertical? Like, is it you mean like geographically, or do you mean on what axis do you mean that? Do you refer to?
Politicians want to map Berlin, and Berlin is already been mapped.
Okay.
And you can find in internet the list of all the streets of Berlin with rental prices for every single building in the city.
Okay.
So you just should paint what is already been mapped.
Got it. Okay, then I got you correctly. Okay, got it. I mean, coming back to your statement concerning you're an economist and it's about supply and demand, and I mean, you know as much as I do, the best rental cap or the easiest rental cap is just to increase supply as much as you want, and then you have a rental cap. That's easy. So you just create as many apartment buildings as possible somewhere outside maybe of Berlin, but then you have like some. And I also think, maybe I'm wrong here, but I would also say like just open the market. If I am an investor, I'm not gonna go I'm just gonna buy land. I'm gonna go for the low segment market. I'm going to build a lot of very affordable apartment buildings, small ones, and then also cover this niche in order to allow people who are really seeking, very, very cheap apartments. And then I'm also, I'm just going to make my ROI calculation and everyone's going to be happy.
Once again, this needs a political decision. I will give you an example. After Second World War, Berlin was divided. Between the Allied powers, USSR, USA, Great Britain, and France. But the Allied powers did not rely much on each other. So every one of them has used separate infrastructure. And this infrastructure also included airports. And to make a long story short, the airport in the city center, Tempelhof, that once used to be the first modern airport of this planet. From the end of the 90s is empty. And is located in the very center of the city. If you look at the map of Berlin on Google Maps, you will see in the very center of Berlin a huge eye, huge empty eye. It's ex-airport Tempelhof. And theoretically, there is a possibility at this eye to build a Manhattan, to build towers, living towers, office towers, commercial centers. There is infrastructure. There are two types of metro. There are autobahns. But there is no political decision to do it. And they made two referendums in Berlin, and the people of Berlin said, no, we do not want new buildings in the center. I cannot help.
But isn't that the contradiction? I mean, given the fact that maybe those are the same people who also fight for the rental cap, isn't that a contradiction of saying, I don't want you to build more and construct more, but I also don't want to.
I want to quote my favorite Winston Churchill. He said, "The best argument against democracy is a 2-minute talk with an average voter."
Okay.
It's Churchill.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, I am there open to every, let's say, opinion, and I'm really always curious about each point of view, and I really like to argue and to debate about the best solution. So and that's why for me, like, the most important thing is always to have like as much data as possible, to have an opinion. But for me right now, based on the information you just gave me, I would just make sure that if I were a politician, I would really fight for it. Then I would just make sure that we construct as many apartment buildings as possible. Coming a little bit to your business, and also I'm really impressed by your language skills, to be honest. What is your clientele? What are your main clients? Do you interact a lot with famous and very, very rich Russian people who want to invest in Berlin? Do you see any trends there? People from Asia, maybe even Chinese people? Do you have more local people from Berlin itself? Where, more or less, like, what is the movement of the transaction which you're dealing with?
Well, let's say, in my experience, I did not encounter celebrities themselves. It's highly unrealistic that one day, let's say, Mr. Rockefeller or whoever will come to your office with a suitcase full of money in cash and will buy something. Normally, people have representatives, companies, secretaries, lawyers, etc., etc., etc. And in the end, after notarization, maybe you will get a hint that this or that personality might be hidden under this or that company. But it never happens that celebrities do come to meet themselves. And I do not know colleagues that it happened to them. No.
And from, let's say, the nationality split, do do you serve rather Germans, Europeans, or people from different nationalities?
Well, I would say I do not discriminate people. Everybody who comes to me is welcome.
Well, I mean,
But
let's say the deal flow you're receiving, like passively, is it, or and do you see a certain trend on a lot of requests coming, for example, from a certain nationality or not, or do you see it very, very dispersed?
I would say it's very humane
Hmm.
to cooperate with your locals, to cooperate with people sharing with you uh, language without accent, to share with you some values, backgrounds, etc., etc. So, in this concern, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, uh, the Germans who live in Berlin maybe are only one third of my clients,
Okay.
and the rest are expats.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, are those rather investors who just want to park their money in Berlin, or is it also people?
Also.
Also, okay, okay. And those people are coming mainly from. Can you do you see a pattern from which country they're coming mostly from, or is it?
Wow. I
Okay.
would say I would say in Berlin you have the whole planet.
Hmm.
I was in contact with well, let's say many of my clients are from Israel or
Hmm.
from the ex-USSR,
Okay.
but I also did work with Danes, Italians, South Americans, Indians, uh, uh, Saudi Arabia,
Wow.
Iraq, Syria,
Everything. Okay.
Iran.
How does that work if I want to buy real estate as a non-national in Germany? Can you walk us in a few sentences around a little bit about across the process of how to buy a property if I'm
Yes,
if I'm not German?
uh, yes. There is no difference between Germans and not Germans.
Hmm.
There is only one difference in a mortgage.
Hmm.
As a resident of Germany or resident of European Union, you will get more money with better terms
Hmm.
than if you are not European and not European resident.
Okay.
But if you have legal money, let's say illegal money cannot buy property in Germany.
Okay.
You
That's
cannot come.
that,
You
that
you
should
cannot
not
come
that
with
shouldn't be allowed anywhere.
yes. You cannot come with a suitcase full of
Yeah.
cash and to buy property.
Yeah.
It's not working this
Yeah.
way. But if you have illegal money, you can buy property, whatever property you want, if you have enough money. Legal
And
money. I
and
emphasize.
and
Emphasize.
and how does that work? Do I have to have most of the people they have to buy cash if they don't have access to a local bank account, or can they also work even with worse terms with a German bank account? Let's say I'm from Latin America or I'm from Russia and I want to buy a property. I don't have all the money. I need to have a
Well,
loan.
we're living in the 21st century. And if you, for example, living anywhere in South America, you have your local dollars, pesos, or whatever,
Hmm.
or you are living in Russia, India, wherever,
Hmm.
the banks are interconnected. So we are having today practically uh, financial internet
Hmm.
of the banks.
Hmm.
And it's only a matter of couple of clicks on the keypad to to have your currency translated or transferred uh, from other country to Germany and to euros. So it's
Okay,
not
okay,
a big deal.
got it. But concerning the loan, like getting a mortgage, then that's a different story. Like transferring the money itself, okay. But I would need to have a, let's say I really need a loan, I really need a mortgage. Would I also?
Well, let's say from my experience, the banks in Germany do differentiate between different countries.
Mhm.
And for example, uh, money that is located in Russia
Mhm.
has, for example, less, let's call it respect or trustworthiness
Mhm.
than the money that is located in Japan or in Israel.
Okay. Okay, makes sense.
So if the banks of the country are transparent, if the currency is strong,
Mhm.
there is no reason why the German banks uh, would not accept the proofs of funds from your country.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay. And then,
Let's say
yeah.
if you bring uh, proof of funds from Venezuela,
Mhm.
uh, today it would not be truthworthy.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. At the moment, yeah, I understand. Do you also, so then, imagining the steps, I, from Russia, I have enough money to buy an apartment. I choose the apartment, or you help me choosing the apartment. I say, yeah, Sergey, that's awesome. Let's buy it. Okay, you help me fixing all the documents. I then transfer the money on a fiduciary account, and then it goes from there. And then we meet in person in Berlin to sign everything, or how does that work? The process
Well,
itself.
first of all, you should understand the procedure of selling and buying the real estate in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
It should be crystal clear that there is no real estate transaction in Germany without participation of a notary.
Okay.
It's the main principal idea of any real estate transaction in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever offers you to buy or to sell a property without a person that identifies as a German notary,
Mm-hmm.
it's not for real.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in Germany, there are databases of the notaries.
Mm-hmm.
German notary should have a document proving he's a German notary.
Mm-hmm.
German notary is normally located in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So this way or another, the purchase contract should be signed in Germany. You can give power of attorney
Mm-hmm.
to somebody to represent you,
Mm-hmm.
but to represent you in Germany.
Okay.
The property is located in Germany, and it should be notarized in Germany.
Okay.
So there is a procedure that takes some specific time. Let's say, uh, in my experience, the shortest period of time between the signing the agreement and getting the rights in between being paid was 1 month,
Wow.
and record the worst record was almost 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It depends on many factors, but on average, it takes, let's say, 2 to 3 months in Berlin.
Okay.
Uh, you need to pay taxes.
Mm-hmm.
You should settle the mortgage if you need mortgage. Um,
The taxes
uh,
are the taxes are on the those are signing taxes, like on the transaction itself. How much is it? Do you know?
well, it's various in different parts of Germany.
Okay.
Currently, if I'm not mistaken, the lowest is in Bavaria. That is 3.5% the purchase tax,
Mm-hmm.
and the highest is 6.5%. For instance, in Brandenburg. Brandenburg is
Okay.
area around Berlin. The purchase tax in Berlin currently is 6%.
Okay. And this is being paid by the buyer, I assume.
Exactly. So
Okay.
normally, you should add to the purchase approximately 1.5% for the notary,
Mm-hmm.
6% plus VAT for the realtor,
Mm-hmm.
and 6% for the local purchase tax. So
Okay.
let's say whatever property you buy, you should pay approximately 13-14% extra.
Okay. Okay. And there are no taxes on the asset itself. It's only on the proceedings, correct? So on the property itself, on the value of the property, on an annual basis, once I own the property, I don't pay any taxes. However, if I make money,
You do pay land tax.
land tax.
That is quite land tax.
Okay.
That is quite insufficient.
In what sense?
But you do pay on annual. Well, it's not high.
Okay, got it. Okay, in that sense. Okay. Have you also had a transaction where the buyer didn't even come physically to Germany, to Berlin?
Yes.
Yes. How did that work?
Well, there are two possibilities. You should have a representative that would sign instead of you, either with power of attorney or without power of attorney.
Okay.
If the representative of yours has the power of attorney from you in the original, he signs for you, and whatever he signs for you is your responsibility.
Okay.
If you give me power of attorney, I'm entitled to sign instead of you, and I'm not responsible for what I sign. You are. But it's also possible that you ask me to sign instead of you without power of attorney. It's also possible I can sign, but whatever I sign without power of attorney, it's my responsibility.
Okay. But
so both things are open. But I will sign for you without power of attorney only if I know you well.
Absolutely, yeah. But for each cases, I need to have someone, let's say, confidential person who I can trust.
Yes.
There locally in Berlin. It's not like, I don't know, like via Bitcoin or any e-signature, which also might be the case. I don't know if that has happened ever.
Okay. You need a physical person.
Okay, got it.
It can be a realtor.
Yeah.
It can be a lawyer. It can be whoever you pick up on the street.
Yeah.
But you should clearly point this person.
Okay, got it. Okay. You mentioned, coming back to another topic quickly, you mentioned before this very cultural diversity in Berlin. And before our talk, before we went live, you mentioned a little bit about the networks and selling information as a real estate agent, which I think is super interesting. Also, kind of this cluster which we have in Berlin among nationalities or groups of real estate agents. For me, as a founder of Holocasa, which I also try to obtain is like, or to achieve, is a great network among individuals from different parts of the world. How do you see that locally in Berlin, the interaction between brokers and also maybe helping each other and then helping the investor or the buyer or the seller or the tenant by just everyone working together?
Well, people do try to help each other, but we are different. I know people who are helping much, but I also know people who will trick you. So it's not that simple.
Okay, it is not that simple. Okay, that's because last week I had someone on the show as well saying, it could be much better, and I know that, and he knows that from different countries in the US and stuff. It's clearer because the legal landscape is easier, and that's why everyone is more inclined to collaborate with each other. And that's why it's also like a question of how more or less like how easy is it to partner up with someone locally as a broker.
Yes, I would say the real estate market in Germany is highly regulated, and if you want to invest in Germany, prepare for a lot of paperwork in German language.
Okay. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Tell us a little bit about your business itself. You are a real estate broker. You obviously you do the most probably the basic services, but you also even do more. To the audience, what do you offer? How can you support potential buyers who are interested in selling, in buying real estate in Berlin?
Well, I sell practically everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have small flats, big flats, residential, commercial, uh, land plots, residential buildings. Everything that comes, I try to sell.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a question of the quality of the property
Mm-hmm.
and of the price of the property. So let's say in my business, I do not discriminate the properties.
Mm-hmm.
I also do renting,
Mm-hmm.
and my clients like me, and they also ask me to manage their properties.
Mm-hmm.
I also try to do it.
Mm-hmm. So you do selling, buying, then also obviously property management, um, and that for in three or in five different languages. That's amazing.
Yes, and also renting.
Okay. Um, for someone who wants to buy real estate in Berlin, do you have any particular tips which they should definitely take from you right now, and also facing right now the market movements? What should someone look after before he chooses to, on the one hand, select a good broker, then also select a property? What are maybe potential obstacles to potential things he definitely should watch out for?
I would say if you do not know German market, if you do not speak German language,
Mm-hmm.
try to find somebody who will advise you
Mm-hmm.
and who will explain you in your language what you are going into.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, the second thing, or maybe the first thing, is to understand what is your uh, aim, what is your objective
Objective,
in
yeah.
the German market.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to make a short-term investment, long-term investment? Um, do you want to park money?
Mm-hmm.
You should understand what is your objective.
Mm-hmm.
And me or other realtor will explain and help you to to fulfill your objective.
Perfect. That's very nice. Very nice. I think very well explained. Um, Sergey, some.
I would also say a couple of more sentences
Yeah, sure.
that, in my opinion, Berlin is not a good destination for short term,
Okay.
but it's a very good destination for long term.
You mean investing?
Yes.
Okay. Because short-term rentals is also even another
Short
topic
term is
concerning Airbnb.
short term is highly regulated, and short term is extremely highly taxed.
Yeah, you pay how much? If I think in Germany in general, if you pay, if you sell, what is it? If you sell before 10 years, like if you buy a property and then you sell it within the first 9 years, you pay like 50% or
Well,
something.
there are different possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one different talk, and we need time for it.
Yeah.
But there are possibilities to diminish these 10 years.
Okay.
Uh,
But yeah.
we can talk about 3 years. We can talk about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a subject, a deep subject.
Okay, so but that definitely weighs around. I didn't know that. That's interesting because I thought like I definitely have to pay like I think up to 50% if you want to sell, and this is because the government wants to make sure that
It may be up to 50%, but not of the total price. It may be up to 50%
of the
of
proceedings.
the gain you
Yeah.
make,
Okay. Proceeds. Yeah.
of the gain.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Because they want to make
It's
sure
just
that
like it's simple. It's simple. The government want to participate in your gain. The
yeah.
government does not want to participate in your uh,
In
how to say in
and
the money you lose.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I also can understand it a little bit because in the US it is very common to flip houses, to do that, renovate and then sell again, and then it's a huge business, and in Germany it's like non-existent. I actually don't have an opinion about it. Apparently they are against it, so it's the way they manage it. And one last question about, because Berlin is also in this topic very hot, about Airbnb and the regulation there. I Last week I published an interview about Barcelona and the short-term rentals, and you need a specific license in order to do that, and also pay taxes and stuff. How is that? How are people and property owners doing that? Do you need a license? Do you have to pay taxes on that? How does that work right now? How's the landscape on Airbnb in Berlin right now?
Basically, now you do need a license.
Okay.
If you want to rent short term your property, the
Hmm.
whole property, you do need a license.
Even as a property owner.
These, yes,
Okay.
these licenses are not given, normally are not given, but you can easily get such a license if you want to rent parts of your property. Let's say you have a two-room flat.
Hmm.
You can rent one flat for Airbnb. You have a five-room flat. You can rent four rooms on Airbnb with a license, but for this case, you will easily get license if you want to rent parts of your property.
Interesting.
You can, but it's also possible to rent uh, a limited period of time the whole property on Airbnb. So the basic principle is if you don't have license, you can rent parts of the property the whole year, or you can rent the whole property part
Got it.
of the year.
Okay.
But to be on the safe side, take the lawyer.
Yeah. Okay. And most of the people
Take legal
obviously,
advice. Take legal advice.
most of the people obviously don't do that. Do you think that there will be a lot of people waking up with a huge bill one day? Because I don't know if they already started to pay taxes, but I guess there's just so many people renting out their flats on Airbnb, and I mean, once you do that via Airbnb, maybe the government they will ask Airbnb to get all the data, and then it can be in
Well,
retrospective. It can be, they can just ask them to pay all the taxes back, and then a lot of I don't know, like a lot of people will just wake up with a huge bill from the government.
I would say what you are saying is that there are people that violate the laws, right? But they also should remember that the German law system or law enforcement system is extremely slow, but also extremely efficient.
Hmm.
Sooner or later, you'll be catched.
Yeah, I also think so, and I don't know if I have no idea how the tax system works for Airbnb. If you as a renter, if you pay that directly via Airbnb, I don't think so.
I heard interviews that in the municipality of Berlin there are special people who check Airbnb and other sites like that and are looking for people violating the law.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like it's super easy. You have all the data, and then you just can say, okay, this guy is like I don't know, super host or how you call it, and we haven't had any.
You should just check 8 hours a day, 5 days a week uh, the site of Airbnb, and check every specific landlord, either he has a license or not.
Yeah.
It's
It's quite simple.
quite easy.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would not recommend to play with the law.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you yourself, if someone says, I'm trying to, or let's say I'm planning to make a good ROI with short-term rentals in Airbnb, do you do that property management yourself, or do you have affiliated partners or can recommend someone who is specialized in that?
I do not do property management for Airbnb.
Okay.
I don't know how can I earn money there.
Okay, I got it. Okay. Sergei, some final thoughts from your side to the audience, maybe also to aspiring real estate agents, to aspiring investors in Berlin. Anything which comes right now up to your mind? Until now, it's been super interesting, to be honest. And you gave me a lot of, even me being German, I learned a lot about the rental cap. You taught me about the Airbnb law. Even talking about Berlin is for me super interesting, and especially your very multicultural background is astonishing and is super impressive. So, some final thoughts for the audience from your side?
Well, I would say I believe in German market. I believe in German economy, and as an economist, I would say the transactions with high ROI, high return, are risky. If you're looking for something safe, it's Germany.
Nice.
Guaranteed, it's Germany. And Berlin is, I would say, is also safe and still makes sense to make a long-term investment.
Great. Awesome. Sergei, how can...
Because I want one last sentence.
Go ahead.
The prices in Berlin are still cheaper than the prices in Munich, Stuttgart, and Hamburg, and much cheaper than in Paris and London.
Yeah.
And once again, we are talking about the third capital city of Europe.
Yeah.
So the prices will continue rising, like it you or not.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes total sense, and I appreciate your opinion about that. And it's always, as I say, you are right now there, the local expert, and that's why we conduct these interviews, to exactly get this opinion and
my pleasure,
these insights from someone who exactly knows the market from within, in fact. Sergei, how can people contact you? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, you can contact me via Skype. You can contact me via phone, email, WhatsApp. You can publish all my contacts.
Perfect. I will do so. I will put everything into the description. And Sergei, has been a pleasure to talk to you. Super insightful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And I wish you very well. And I'm sending the best regards to Berlin.
And we'll stay in contact.
Oh, absolutely. We'll talk soon. Absolutely. Okay. Sergei, have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.